What's cooking, folks? Vermillion Phoenix here, and today I'm here to talk to you about the preferred parts in the Naptha sprayer. This is for Orcs Must Die Unchained. So the Naptha sprayer is an interesting trap. It always has been. It increases the damage that enemies take from fire damage by reducing their fire armor. Now, this is interesting for a few reasons. First, there's not a lot of armor reduction abilities in the game, let alone elemental specific ones. But it has a few very odd things about it. First, it generally starts off with a very long cooldown. This cooldown decreases by leveling up, and it has a three tile range. So it covers about as much space as you would get from things like the web spinner, the arrow wall, and the Spitfire. It actually pairs up really well with the Spitfire due to the fact that they have basically the same effective range. But it also has a limited number of placements, and that both helps and hurts the trap. The limited number of placements is why Smolder gets to place it for free instead of just having a discount or something like that. But that specific part allows a lot of things with Smolder that are actually really good, especially when using with it other fire traps. Now, Naptha sprayer itself isn't like super amazing on its own. It only works, or I should say it only has additional effects in combat when you're using other fire traps. Although if you're not using fire traps specifically, it does offer an easy way to generate an additional combo point. It sprays for a really long time when it fires. That's not something that's actually in the ability information here, but by the time you get this thing up to tier 7, it's essentially spraying about 100% of the time. It's a little bit less than that, but with triggers and such, you can have it reset pretty much immediately, although even that isn't necessary. So because it doesn't do any damage, damage boosting triggers and things like that are really not going to make a lot of sense. You don't want to keep the Naptha sprayer from firing. So there's really only 2 triggers that you would want to put in here. The best is probably going to be the heat activated, because if you're using Naptha sprayer, there's a almost 100% chance that you are going to be using fire damage with it. And the additional armor, if there was some way to make sure that the damage boosts affected armor reduction that traps offer, that would be a very good thing for the Naptha sprayer, since that would actually make the damage boost that was recently added to the triggers worthwhile. But that would be something for the devs to consider, not something that actually exists in the game right now. But you'll notice the Naptha sprayer has some interesting parts over here. An XP siphon and a Vanity Plating. So I've commented about this before, and the Vanity Plating seems to operate somewhat weirdly. It activates based on the number of enemies it actually causes the trap to trigger on in the majority of cases, and not just based on how long the trap has existed within a map. And that's what the description says it should do. So it actually works really well when you have a large range trap just spraying on multiple enemies at once. Because Smolder gets to place these traps for free as well, you can actually just toss a lot of them around in early stages, especially in something like say Chaos Trials, and use it to farm up experience much faster than just about any other setup that exists. Because it costs 0 coins for Smolder specifically, this setup is actually meant for fast leveling. You'll be able to set the enemies on fire via Smolder's natural abilities. She will basically cause the traps to reset as soon as they stop firing. They'll begin firing again, and you'll just reap experience for every enemy that passes within the range of the Naptha sprayer. Now, this can be used to reach really ridiculously high levels very early, even in like lower level difficulties like Apprentice and War Mage. It's not really necessary there unless you're trying to farm some of the early chaos trials. But at the same time, like having a level 20 character in a place where, or maybe not even 20, because you won't necessarily hit 20 on Apprentice. But I've had situations where I've went through Apprentice maps and reached battle level 12 or 14 plus, which is very, very unlikely without a ridiculously high amount of combos normally. And it's all because of stuff like this, and also pairing it up with tar and XP siphons in the tar, since you can put 2 siphons in tar traps. And so increasing your overall ability to deal damage with your hero by absorbing additional experience that didn't normally exist in the map is very, very good, and it's something that shouldn't be overlooked. This is actually one of my favorite strategies with Smolder, just sort of ramping up experience to deal a lot of damage very quickly. And while Smolder doesn't seem to be able to deal as much damage as a lot of other characters at the same battle level easily, mainly because of the inconsistency of firing for most of the fire traps, she does manage to deal more damage when you outlevel everybody faster. So that's an important thing to remember there. Although this would probably work best when you are playing one-on-one versus in a group, as of course the additional battle levels are only going to go to you, and you're also going to basically deal less damage due to the fact that your damage multiplier is split between the group. So that's another thing to remember. This is probably best as a solo strat, but it can work otherwise. Now, if you're playing with anybody except for Smolder, what I would recommend is taking the subsidized parts. Now, this is because with Naptha Sprayer being a limited number of uses, you're probably not going to immediately just be spamming 6 Naptha Sprayers in the beginning of a match. And the additional coin that subsidized parts will grant you both cheapen the Naptha Sprayer, which is always good, and they will also give you bonus coin that you can use to place other traps that may not be the Naptha Sprayer. With that done, overall it should just make a very easy introduction to a lot of the maps because of that extra income. Stamped parts, of course, are always good, but they don't really offer you as much versatility in doing things as the subsidized parts would here. So subsidized parts actually, for me, make more sense in the Naptha Sprayer than the stamped parts would, especially since there's a lot of much more expensive traps that are more spammable or just more useful in general that the stamped parts should go into. Now, if you're also not going to do that, you can pretty much swap out any of the siphons that you want. The bounty generator is actually pretty good in the Naptha Sprayer due to the fact that so many enemies actually path over where you can place these. So if you can get a 3 tile length wall or archway to place these in, then you'll just be pumping up the coin of everything that walks through it. And again, because you can likely set things on fire and have them path in front of this trap repeatedly, the amount of bonus coin that you can get with a lot of Naptha Sprayers or other traps that might also be using the bounty generators, you can get that 20% coin cap pretty easily, or the 20% bonus coin. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the Naptha Sprayer, I believe. Just a caveat about the sprayer itself, not the parts, but Naptha Sprayer, I believe, is a 40 armor reduction. You get basically close to the same reduction that you would see from the debilitation resonator. Okay, had to think of the name for a second. But it's not quite as strong, and the way that I believe the math works out is you need to be using at least 2 other traps, maybe 3, like 2 to 3 fire traps should probably be in place before you even think about using the Naptha Sprayer, or I shouldn't say traps, 2 to 3 sources of fire damage. So it also makes sense if you're using 1 to 2 fire traps to bring this when you're playing with Smolder, just because it'll boost your hero damage as well as the damage from those traps. but if you're using at least 3 fire traps, then Naphtha sprayer will result in the majority of cases, if placed properly, more damage than you can get by using the 4th fire trap, just because it is both in a different section, a wall, and there's only one other wall fire trap, but also because it will increase the damage of hopefully all 3 of the other traps simultaneously. So Naphtha sprayer is actually really good. It's a trap that I don't use a lot just because of how specialized it is, but when it is used, it is amazing. So, you know, there's just some ideas out there for you guys. Let me know what you think about the Naphtha sprayer. Do you think it's a great trap? Do you think it probably could still use some work? Or, you know, what do you think? Leave that in the comments below, and I will take a look at it whenever I get the chance. Either way, thanks as always, and until next time, have a good one, folks.